All right, welcome back to season 6. This is our episode on The Watchers. But of course, before we get into
Who watches the Watchers?
who watches The Watchers, we watch The Watchers watch other things. So before we get into that, though, we do have quick cuts. And would you like to start us off? Because I'm introducing this episode.
Sure. So I feel a tiny bit sheepish about this quick cut because it's not really a horror film, and I kind of know it's not a horror film, but
Do
it's a
I
horror director.
Okay, I think you just look for things to like, oh, I'll do a franchise, I'll do a game, I'll do something that's not horror related.
I admit I break the rules a lot.
Yeah.
So this is Alex Garland's
Mm.
Civil War.
Oh, okay, go ahead. I was just thinking about this today, thinking we should do a Civil War thing because it's 2024.
Yeah,
And here you are. There you go.
I mean it's horrific
Wait.
in some ways. I mean, it's not a horror film, but Alex Garland, of course, did Men
Yes.
and Annihilation
Yes.
and Ex
No,
Machina,
yeah.
and so he's
It's a good film.
it is, and he's in the horror genre.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
agree.
And I felt it was topical given the attempted
Still doesn't get you off the hook
assassination
the fact that
of
it's not a horror film, but fair enough. It's Alex Garland. It's a good film. There you go.
and with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump kind of seemed to fit
Yeah.
because had that actually happened, this might have been a lot closer to reality. Starring Kristen Dunst, 7.1 on Internet Movie Database, and 81% critic and 70% audience score. Civil War is a 2024 dystopian thriller film written and directed by Alex Garland, and it follows a team of journalists traveling from New York City to Washington, D.C. during a civil war fought across the United States between an authoritarian federal government and several regional factions. So this is kind of like a hypothetical, what if there was a civil war?
Yes.
Sadly, a lot of the rhetoric these days in the United States alludes to a potential civil war, and hopefully that doesn't happen. So interesting of Garland to make this film
Yes.
right now, which I think was done intentionally. And I think he was wise to. It was interesting that he takes the perspective of a photojournalist,
Yes.
and therefore you are not invested in the conflict. He didn't choose to put the viewer
No.
on one side or the other
Yeah.
side. There's really, it's so separated from the actual conflict in the United States right now. Like California and Texas are aligned, which right now would never happen.
Yeah.
So it's enough fiction that no one, I don't think, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican or what your politics are, you won't be angered by the film. It's just showing the perspective of a civil war that could happen.
Yes.
And I kind of hope that, I think the intention was to show the horror of a civil war and that both sides would watch this film and be like, okay, this is not what we want. Like, whatever our political differences, like,
Yeah.
this isn't going to be good for anybody. So I wonder if that's kind of what he was going for.
I think it was very smart filmmaking not or to not have the audience need to choose a side or to telegraph for us these are the good guys, these are the bad guys,
Yes.
quote unquote. It's very much what I think also is very smart filmmaking is that it's about journalistic ethics and it's
Mhm.
about the choices you make and do you choose to save your friends or do you choose to get that photo?
Yeah.
Right? Like those kinds of things, which I think, I mean, I'm not a wartime photojournalist, but if I've watched documentaries and read interviews with those people, and I think it does come down a lot to, okay, well, I see that happening, but that's not the story.
Mhm.
That's the story. And do I get that?
And you realize the risk that
Yes.
photojournalists take,
Yeah.
wartime ones, and they actually do that.
Yeah.
Like, there's photojournalists on the beaches of
Oh,
D-Day.
100%.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I
good
appreciated
film.
it from multiple levels. And again, it's cool that Alex Garland, he's very eclectic. Like, he does very
Yeah.
different things. Like, this is an A24 film, but it's nothing like Men. It's nothing like
No.
Ex Machina, but it's still super interesting and
Yeah.
well done. So I'm appreciating Alex Garland more and more as time goes on. And I think it's definitely a recommend. And I think whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you would go and would get something out of this film and you wouldn't feel like the film was against
No,
you.
I
I
don't
think
think
it's
so.
more just like, this is horrible. War is horrible. And no matter what disagreements we have politically, this is not what anybody wants.
And the impact that it has on those people's lives.
For sure.
Right. And I think the young woman I can't remember the actress's name. She was very good. Kirsten Dunst is good. Yeah, I think it's a good cast, good performances. The concept is really good. Nick Offerman has a very minor role in the
Yeah.
film, but he's really good
For sure.
in it. And it was interesting too, because I think I don't think he's as right wing as you might think he is. Like by the characters that he
Right,
plays.
right,
I
right.
think he's actually quite left wing.
Okay.
I've watched some of his stand up.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Where he's not playing a part and he's just very down to earth. He seems pretty centrist left as opposed to he's definitely not right wing.
Right.
Um,
And I also like that they also resisted the urge to make this like an action film.
totally.
Like it's not like Independence Day, like woohoo, like there's none of that.
No, there's
Like
no glorification of
No,
war
not
or
at all.
violence. Yeah, it's
So quite smart to take the perspective of the photojournalist,
yes,
because that just shows like we are observing the horrors of war.
totally.
So yeah, really good. I recommend it.
Yeah, good choice. Even
Thanks.
though it's not a
Even
horror
though
film,
it's not a
it's
horror film.
cheating.
Yeah. What's your quick cut?
Okay, I'm actually changing my mind. So I wore this shirt deliberately. I do have a film down for my quick cut, but that's not what I'm going to talk
Ooh,
about because what?
Is it the French one? Oh, this is a new movie about a Paris.
Oh, Under Paris. That's not what I'm going to talk about,
Oh,
but
I
it's
thought you were saying
related.
because the shark. Okay,
It's
yeah.
related.
Okay.
So I did watch Under Paris the other day.
Okay.
And that, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And then I saw that there was a documentary on Sharksploitation films.
Oh, wow.
So they talk about the original, the Jaws, and then they talk about like Sharknado, and they kind of do the eras of the shark films.
Mhm.
And that got me thinking, okay, well, there's a bunch that I've kind of.
Did you show your Sharknado collection? You have every Sharknado film,
Yeah.
like in a trophy case
Yes,
over there. But
yes.
yeah, I can't see it on.
It's
film.
actually, I don't like the films. I just like Ian Ziering. So the fact that I even know what his name is problematic.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Okay. So I watched this Sharksploitation documentary and I had just watched Under Paris. I thought, oh, there's a few of these. I've seen 47 Meters Down.
Yep.
And anyway, I hadn't seen Deep Blue Sea and I hadn't seen The Reef.
Okay.
So I thought, well, I'll watch those. And
Have you seen the Meg?
you know what? It's not streaming. I tried to find the Meg and I'm going to
Okay.
have to find a different place or rent it
Hmm.
because I wanted to see the Meg and Meg 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Jason Statham anyway, because he's so ridiculous.
We could do a whole season of just shark movies.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
That would be horrible. But we could. Anyway, that's why I wore this shirt. Obviously, Jaws still the best one. Deep Blue Sea, I mean, it had its moments. Orca was another one that's from the 70s. It came out, I think, the year or two after Jaws.
Mhm.
And that's definitely like, Jaws, this time it's personal. That's definitely with Orca. It was meant to be personal,
Or
right?
Piranha. Or, yeah.
But the weird thing, okay, because it does make, like, it makes you laugh going, okay, this is stupid. An orca is not going to be able to recognize a particular person and then chase them down. Okay, but we now have like killer wasps that have photographic memories and can remember who harmed them and chase like those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
Wasn't there a story like off of Spain? There was like whales attacking and killing people.
Yeah.
And orcas, I think, actually can be pretty aggressive.
they can be.
Yeah.
Anyhow, and so if you're on the interwebs, there's lots of YouTube. I've seen this a few times now. You can see off in the water. It's this guy fishing on a kayak, and it's absolutely terrifying
Wow.
because you can see, meters away from him, you see this shape, and you can see how fast it's coming. And
Wow.
it's a shark that
It's real.
comes out of the water and grabs his kayak. And you can see like the whole thing shake because he's got a GoPro or whatever going on.
That's crazy.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, that sounds really scary.
Anyway, there's a few videos like that out there, right? But
What was the name of the documentary you watched?
it's just called Sharksploitation.
Oh, it's actually called Sharksploitation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
And it was I think I watched it on Shudder.
Was it on Shark Week?
No, but there's obviously films like Shark Week or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were just talking about part of the educational part of the film was and it's funny because I don't know if you knew this, Peter Benchley, who wrote Jaws, he was very unhappy with the legacy of the film. And
In terms of people being terrified of sharks, or
and then basically annihilating
yeah,
the shark population, particularly on the East Coast. And so he set up, he passed, I think in 2015 or something, But he and his wife set up an institute for saving sharks.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
And he has said in print, um, if I had to do it over again, I never would
Wouldn't
have
do
written
it.
Jaws.
Yeah.
Because it had such an impact on, and it's funny because I've heard other people say this. It had an impact on people like being afraid of going in the bathtub, being
Yeah.
afraid of
Yeah.
going in a lake. It's like intellectually, I know that there are no carnivorous sharks in this lake because it's fresh water. But that was the cool thing about, sorry, I'm going to end this conversation, but Under Paris, the premise is because it's very topical.
Yeah.
It's happening present day and they're getting ready for the Olympics.
Oh, wow.
And of course, there's been news stories about how dirty the Seine is and all the
Yes.
rest of it. So anyway, the premise of this is that there is a shark that has learned to survive in fresh water,
Oh, wow.
and that there's enough of a mix in the Seine that there's still a little bit of saltiness,
Okay.
but there's enough fresh water. And of course, nobody believes them that there's a shark in the Seine, right? Of
Right.
course. But yeah, it was really,
I've heard good things. I haven't seen it yet, but I want to watch it.
I thought it was pretty good. Like, I mean, it was better than 47 meters down in my mind, but it also, like, they also talked about all the spin-offs like Piranha and
Yes. Yeah.
Anaconda and all those ones. And I thought, okay, I haven't seen Piranha 3D or any
Oh,
other
what?
ones, but
Piranha's amazing.
but I have to go see that now.
Maybe I can actually get you to watch Piranha now that you've.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's on my list. So I thought, okay, well,
Let's watch it together.
because this was I mean, if I've seen Zombievers, I may as well see
You could see.
Piranha.
Yes. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
So
Anyway,
we're actually not going to review the Watchers this episode. We're just going to talk about shark movies
totally
for another hour.
sorry.
So.
Anyway, I'm going to end it there. And our feature presentation today.
What is your favorite shark movie? No, just kidding.
Yeah, it's Jaws. It's 100% Jaws. And it's not just my favorite, it is the best made of those films, I believe.
Until you see Piranha, but sure.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
So we are actually not reviewing Under Paris. We are doing Piranhas. No. We're doing 2024's The Watchers.
Oh, there's our first YouTube short. Okay.
That's right.
What is this place? Who are you?
We're just like you, lost.
They come every night. They watch us until the sun rises again. It's a window on the other side.
Okay, so this is released.
The Watchers. Right?
This is released. The Watchers, 2024. It was released in June 7th. It is A.M. Shine, and it was directed by Ishana Shyamalan, M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. The cast is Dakota Fanning, Georgina Campbell, and Alwyn Fuere. I had to look how to pronounce that. Only 5.7 on IMDb, 32% critic score, 52% audience score.
So we've had a lot of films where the critic score was
This is the
higher, but this is
opposite.
the inverse. Yeah.
Yeah. So the summary is Mina, a 28-year-old artist who gets stranded in an expansive, untouched forest in Western Ireland, finds shelter. She unknowingly becomes trapped alongside 3 other strangers that are watched and stalked by mysterious creatures each night. I had no expectations going in. I had seen a trailer when I went to see another film, but it was vague enough, and I'd read the book, so I knew what the
you've
story.
read the book.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
knew what the story was.
Is there piranhas in the book?
No piranhas in the
Okay,
book.
yeah.
No, it's just the Watchers, and the piranhas aren't watching anything.
So when you say you had no expectations,
Yeah.
now given that this is Ishana Shyamalan,
Mhm.
did you have expectations in terms of style?
That there would be a twist.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, so her father produced it.
Mhm.
He was the second unit director. And no, excuse me, I think she did I think that was the thing. I didn't expect it to be like her father's films. I had read the book, excuse me, so I understood the story.
So if you had watched this film
Yeah.
and were told M. Night Shyamalan directed it, would you question that?
I think so.
Okay. Because to me, it did feel very reminiscent and similar to.
I agreed. There are some things that stuck out, like the university segments. I thought, oh, this is just like The Village, or
Yeah.
this part is just like. But I felt they stuck pretty closely to the story.
Okay, that's interesting. So you feel like it's pretty close to the book, The Watchers?
I feel like it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So had you seen a trailer going in? Did you know anything about it?
It's funny. So I've been trying not to watch trailers, as I've mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think the trailer was on in the theater, but I kind of like didn't really look at the screen. Like I tried to avert my eyes.
Yeah.
So I had a sense, but not really.
Now, Dakota Fanning is an interesting performer to me because I've seen her do things like I really liked her. Did you watch the series on Netflix called The Alienist?
No.
Really good. And also based on several books actually about kind of like a profiler before there was profiling. So the first film takes place, I think it's turn of the century New York. Might even be London, but I think it's New York. Um, and it's actually there's some pretty gruesome scenes in it, but there's a character that plays a doctor, psychiatrist, kind of like um a Sigmund Freud kind of character.
Right.
And he's the profiler, kind of looking for psychological reasons that these murders would be happening.
Okay. Yep.
She kind of plays um a writer, but of course at this time a woman shouldn't be a writer.
Mm.
She shouldn't be smoking cigarettes. She shouldn't be interested in murder investigations. So she kind of plays the outcast. And she's very aloof, and I think she was really good for that part.
She's amazing. I remember seeing her when she was a kid in a lot of movies,
Yes.
and I was always like, damn, like she's really impressive. I found her performance pretty flat.
Yes.
I found all the performances pretty flat. I don't think that's her fault. I just don't know if she was given much to work with, or I
Yeah.
think her character was just everyone is just kind of oddly maybe flat is how I describe it. Like there's not a whole lot of range.
Mhm.
They unfortunately just seem to roll with what's going on and they never really question much. They're just kind of okay, like let's go with this situation. I don't know. I think that was one of the problems for me with this film. All in, it didn't really work for me. I appreciated elements of it. But I maybe expected more from Dakota Fanning given what
Mhm.
she's been able to do. And I felt like her character was just kind of meh.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with my thing too, was I didn't find her performance blew me away. And I think flat's probably the best word. It was kind of like, yeah, just flatline. There wasn't like, yeah, I would think, I mean, I'm not giving anything away because this was
We're not going to be able to talk too much without spoilers with
No.
this one, I don't think, because like in Shyamalan fashion,
totally.
bit of a twist.
But it does say, like in the summary, that she's stranded in a
Sure,
forest, right?
yeah.
So what I was going to say is, like, I think I'd be a little more perturbed if I was stranded in a forest with three strangers.
Yeah.
And I mean, at one point, I
Well, she
can't-
kind of goes from like living her life to suddenly being pulled into the
Totally.
situation, but she kind of just accepts it all and just gets integrated right away
Yeah.
without really questioning, like, this seems kind of crazy. Or,
yeah,
I felt like that transition didn't quite work for me.
yeah. I mean, I think that's what it was for me too. Is that it seems really artificial. Like, okay, you're an American, obviously living in Ireland. You're working at a pet store. You're an artist. You've been asked to deliver this mynah bird or whatever it is,
Mhm.
and then the rest of the film unfolds from there. Um, Now we can talk about this in the spoilers, but how did you feel in terms of the resolution of the plot? Because that left me a bit
Yeah.
lacking as well.
Me too. The whole thing just feels a bit. So I think I liked the beginning. I think the cinematography is really good. Like
Mhm.
it kind of grabs you right at the top,
Yeah.
like the way she films, like the guy running through the forest at the
Yes.
beginning. The cinematography actually throughout I thought was really good, and the use of like color was very good. Um, if you're the type of person who's gonna nitpick a film in terms of like logic or questioning things, like this movie's gonna drive you crazy.
Yeah,
I think
agreed.
this movie could appeal to people who are willing to kind of suspend disbelief. If you're happy, just kind of like go along for the ride, accept everything that's happening, and just kind of enjoy what it's trying to do. But if you're the type of film viewer who's gonna like look for logic and look for things that make
Yeah,
sense, I think
inconsistencies.
this movie falls apart pretty quickly. Um, the conclusion I just found a bit underwhelming.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago, but like to me, this is very in the same vein as like Quiet Place, The Silence, Stranger Things. Like there've been a bunch of movies with these whatever they are, creatures from in this case, they have an explanation for the creatures, unlike A Quiet Place.
Yes.
Um,
And one thing I appreciate, I think there's a lot to grapple with in terms of like symbolism
yes.
and like thematically, I think there's lots going on, but just in terms of like the film coming together and
Yeah.
working, I wonder if you're the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan, if you almost feel like you have to have a twist. But I guess, does the book have a twist? Is it done in such a way where,
It's this, well, it depends what you're thinking. Is the twist that you're referring to the one at the very end?
yes.
Yeah, that's in the book.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think they follow the book fairly closely.
Yeah.
But I think if they wanted to do some other things, we would have to spend more time perhaps setting up elements of the film like the professor or
Yeah.
like just the backstory.
Exactly. I feel like in a lot of those films where you have a group of strangers who kind of meet in a weird situation,
yeah,
I actually really like those movies, but you often have like more conflict with them or more of them discussing backgrounds, or you get to know those characters better.
Yeah.
I feel like these guys all just kind of, all right, we're all in this together and let's move on with the plot. There wasn't enough character development.
I mean, the only thing I think that is fair that you can like, so you know that one of the women. Mm,
It's a very hard film to talk without spoilers because it's,
yeah, I don't know. Like, do you have anything else to say before we jump into spoilers? Because I don't know if I have anything else that I can say other than jumping into spoilers.
yeah, it's true. I think the nature of these movies, because the premise is a big part of it, but it's not introduced right away.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything without giving things away.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the pace is pretty slow.
Yeah.
The way they handle, yeah, you're right. I think we just have to go into spoilers.
I mean, for me, so in terms of recommendation, I don't know if I would recommend this. If I was going to recommend anything, I'd say go read the book. It's a fairly short read. It's quick. It's easy. I think it's like most cases, the book is better than the film because they had to make choices in the film about what they were going to cut. And for this kind of story, I found it more entertaining, more believable to read it than to see it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would also say I don't recommend it. I mean, I'm almost close to recommending it, and I've heard some people really like it, but I think it just falls a bit short.
It was too meh for me, like overall.
Yeah.
It didn't grab me. There weren't any segments where I thought, "Oh, that's fantastic. You got it."
Like there's good. I think she has potential. Like as a filmmaker, I wouldn't write her off because of this. I think technically, actually, it was really good.
Yeah.
But something didn't come together.
For a
didn't
first
coalesce.
feature, I think this
She
is her
shows
first-
promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But-
would be. I'd be curious to see her do another film. It did feel a little bit like an M. Night Shyamalan movie to me. Even the way the four people stand together kind of
That's-
remind me of like Knock at the Cabin. Like
I was gonna say there were certainly scenes where I was like, okay, this reminds me of a Shyamalan movie.
yeah, but something about the way it's paced just didn't quite work.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't really work. And I think the just the overall reviews and critical reception kind of reflects that.
I think she was partly responsible for the writing, and I think that's part of the problem in the film is I don't think there was anything gripping enough to, grab us as the watchers of the film.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you read the book first?
Yes.
Do you think that helps or hurts coming into this?
For
Like,
me,
does having that context and background maybe make the film make more sense?
for me, it did.
Because I think sometimes too, like maybe it's not explained super well.
Yeah, I think my level of enjoyment was probably greater because I had read the book. And so I understood the basic premise and I could focus on, okay, well, what's happening with the characters and the writing.
Mhm.
I think I don't think it would hurt you if you haven't read the book. I mean, you could certainly get the film, but I think there's an element that's added when you read the book. I mean, it's kind of like The Shining, right? If you've read the book and then watched the movie, it's a very different film than it is a book.
Yeah. Like to
And
me, it was the cinematography that stood out the most.
yeah.
Is something I really thought was good, and the use of color I thought was really good. But everything else, it didn't just work as a
So
film.
it's a sort of
I don't recommend it.
Okay, no I don't think I recommend it either. So it's 2 thumbs down, no recommendation.
Unfortunately.
No film for you. 1 year. Okay, so we're into spoilers.
Yep, spoilers.
Okay.
So I just had an upcoming thing spoiled for me.
Okay, what I was going to say earlier, I didn't ruin it this time, so I don't have any more cutting to do. So we get in, or at least you feel that there's something off about the older lady in the
Yes.
film.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Madeline?
No, Olwen Foray, or was that Georgina Campbell?
Oh, I don't remember. I
I
just
don't-
know the character's name was Madeline.
Yes. So there's something off with her. That there's the third female, it was her husband that we saw
Yes.
running at the beginning. So we know that she and like John had left to try to find help, and he's gone, and we know what happened to him. So now, and then we also have this other kid who seems to be really dominated.
It's like Danny or Daniel.
Daniel, I think, yeah. And he's dominated by the older woman. We don't know much about them other than the fact that they're stranded. We know that Dakota Fanning's character, kind of her, is that, oh, my car doesn't work. There's an electrical problem in this weird spot in the woods. So she gets stranded. She tries to escape, but ends up just coming back in a circle, like often happens in these films. I thought the escape sequence was pretty good. Where they
when they get on the boat.
where they go to find the boat.
The thing where she's testing to see if it's her husband on the other
Yes.
side of the door, and they get him to like look
Yeah.
down, but he looks fun. Like I like that had some tension. I thought
Yeah,
that
there was
worked.
some good tension there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that parts of the film that were implausible to me. So for example, when Dakota Fanning's character Mina has taken, interesting too, I wonder if there's any connection to Dracula there, Bram Stoker's
Mhm.
Dracula. But anyway, so Mina goes out during the day, and these things only come out at night. So thank you. Can you hear the traffic noise on that? I'm pretty sure it's going to come through
Probably.
on that.
That's okay.
That was a loud motorcycle. Anyway, so we know that Mina's character has. Where was I going with that? I'm trying to.
Something about they only come out at night. She gets there during the day.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So she went out. She's testing, and she takes a bunch of the stuff from one of their caves.
Yes.
And then they come that night, and they trash the place, and they go down into the lower bunker.
Yeah.
That they didn't even know was there.
Yep.
But of course, Madeline knew it was there.
Yes.
Anyway, if this is all sounding confusing, you should go watch the movie. You probably shouldn't be in the spoiler section. So why are you here? I'm curious to know, that part didn't ring true for me, because it's like, really? It seems like this has been going on for years, and this is the first time somebody's angered them or cheesed them off, that they, because they obviously have the power to ruin that little.
Yeah, like they
concrete-
break the glass.
Yeah,
when
they
they're
break the
ramming
glass, they
into
break
it.
the door.
I mean, I guess presumably these guys have been following the rules, and then she doesn't. But like, where do these rules come
Yeah,
from?
totally.
Like, how do we know about these rules? Like,
Yeah.
that was kind of weird. Also, the idea that I think they allude to they're living in that bunker for like 8 months in some cases. Their hair looks perfect and well
Yeah.
done. They're wearing nice clothes. They don't look like they've looked like they showered that
Yeah.
morning. Like they've been eating birds, and they're like don't
Yeah.
look emaciated.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing was a bit of a stretch. Like you guys do not look like you've been surviving. Like you look like you just got out of the shower and you're ready for a party. Like
Yeah.
that was like, so those sorts of nitpicky things. Like I feel like there's lots of logic
Yes.
pulls. And even like she goes from like going to deliver this bird, and he's like, quick, get in here. And then, okay, you need to follow these rules. And like, okay, so then we're just following these rules. And like the rules maybe don't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And they break the rules, and it's not that bad. It's just the way that was all executed just didn't really work.
I mean, I'd be more.
Like in the book, is it the same, or do they do a better job?
I don't recall specifically whether they do a better job. I mean, Mina's character is similar in the sense that she doesn't question
Yeah. Did you
Madeline.
call that Madeline? Like I predicted, right? I'm like, okay, she's obviously one of them or part working with them.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, I mean, I knew it because I'd read the book,
oh, right.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, she's set apart physically.
Yes.
She's older. She's got the whitish gray hair or whatever.
And like, how would you know all of this stuff? Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because I think there are elements of this film that could have made it a really good film.
Yeah, I think there's a good movie in here somewhere.
Yes.
It just didn't quite
But
happen.
I think again, like you've articulated it really well, that it's not any one aspect. It's just that it didn't really gel as a film.
That's right.
It's nothing, there's not one part of the film that's horrible. I mean, the writing could be better. The performances could be more energetic, but it wasn't one thing that made the film.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't like The Strangers. Like, it's not like this was terrible.
No.
It's just like, oh, you're almost kind of there, but like
But it just leaves you lacking, like leaves you wanting
in too
more.
many different
Yeah,
departments.
Yeah, agreed.
Mostly just visually, I was like, oh, this is a gorgeous film.
Yes.
But then everything else didn't really work. Like even symbol, like, so I like that there's the opening scene in the forest and the guy's running, and then it cuts to like these iguanas in like a cage.
Yep.
And the cage has that like orange hue lighting, which mirrors the orange hue lighting of the coop thing that the characters are in.
Yeah.
So like that was really clever because then you associate, oh, like these lizards trapped in this cage. It's the same as
Interesting.
these people trapped in this coop thing. So like the way she used color to do that was really smart.
Yeah.
Or like they're always watching these like reality TV shows.
Yes.
So like the commentary on like us watching and maybe parroting these people, and we also have like the bird who's like we're watching and it's also parodying. Like there's lots of interesting thematic
Yes.
and symbolic things happening in the movie. And so I like that when they put those things in there with the reality TV show, it's like, okay, so what's she trying to say about
Yeah.
voyeurism or watching or
Yeah, totally. Like we like to, like with all the marriage shows and dating shows and Big Brother and Lost and all, like we like to be the voyeur watching people trapped in a scenario.
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And like the pet store and like even though she's carrying around a bird in a cage. So
Yes.
and all that's really interesting. And that's what's too bad. Like I feel like had the film been executed well, all those elements would have actually been made for a really cool
Agreed.
film.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, like she's trying to say something that made me more interested. For me, I think the problem is just the characters and maybe the writing or
Yeah, it didn't go, and I think her source material is good. Like I having read the book, I mean, A.M. Shine has written a bunch of these style of books, I think. So I think her source material was good, and the book isn't crazy long, so she wasn't cutting out huge parts of the, story. I just think it's, yeah, a combination of, okay, well, the writing, the performances, maybe holes in the writing or holes in the plot. For whatever reason, the sum of the parts was not greater than the whole.
Yeah.
Right.
like it almost reminded me of like a bad M. Night Shyamalan movie, like not one of his good ones.
Yeah, that's fair. And I have to say, like, I wondered, okay, I'm guessing she's in her 20s, maybe 30s. I don't know how old she is.
Yeah, in interviews, I think she looked late 20s.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, that she's been around sets with her dad. She's probably picked up a lot of stuff from him.
He probably helped with the film.
Oh, I'm being a producer and a second unit director, I'm sure he
And her
had
dad, yeah.
yeah, quite a bit of say in the film would be my guess. But yeah, I mean, again, this is one of those films where you can't really say too much without giving away too much
Mhm.
because you kind of have to watch the film to get what's happening. But it's another one of those, like I'm just trying to remember how much of the creature we see.
Well, again, that's where like I think this is a pet peeve for me. But I thought at the beginning when they weren't really showing the creature as
Mhm.
much and you'd see it like in the shadows and you're kind of left more to the imagination, it was effective.
Yeah.
But remember there's the scene where what's her name?
Mina.
Mina and Madeline, they're out in the woods and they see the creature
yes,
from
yes.
behind and it morphs and then they all come out.
Yes.
And then from that point forward, they're showing them a lot more.
Yeah.
And like once just CG monsters for me, as soon as I see them, I'm just like, eh.
Yeah.
Even though I think she tried to like
Yeah.
obscure them in shadow a little bit or not fully show them, but
And it was similar in Arcadian,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Although I've not seen a monster with that
snapping. Yeah,
snapping.
that was
That was pretty
cool
cool.
for sure. But yeah, I feel like the creatures get a little bit overexposed. It's cool that it sounds like this is actually taken from actual folklore, though, like
Yes.
the fairies and the changelings,
Yeah.
and it's like that's Irish folklore. So
Yeah.
again, that's cool too that is in there. And conceptually, I didn't mind that.
No, me neither. I actually like that. That connection. They're not aliens.
Yes,
They're sort of like exiled gods, right?
that's right.
Like they were the rulers of Earth at one point until we figured out how to exile them into the subterranean.
Yeah, and that whole like in the professor's office or whatever,
Yes.
you realize that they were like with humans for a while,
Yes.
and I guess it's the changelings are the or is it the halflings, changelings?
Yeah.
Were the offspring of
Yes.
humans. Yeah. So
Which is
all of
where
that
Madeline
stuff
comes in.
That's right.
Yeah.
So all of that was cool. And even the concept of like the professor who's like, we can use changelings to like bring back our loved ones who
Yes.
we've lost, and it's not them, but it looks like them. Like
Yeah.
that's all pretty cool. So the frustrating thing about this movie is that it seemed like they had lots of good ideas,
Yes.
lots of good stuff to work with. Even like technically it was good, but something about the way the story came together didn't work.
Yeah. Agreed.
Which is the most important part of a film, really, is storytelling.
Yeah.
So it is a shame because, and maybe if this was her 10th film and not her first film, she'd have enough experience to make it work. I wonder how much of that is because this is her first film, just not
Yeah.
knowing how to weave a narrative in an effective way, even though like her shots are beautiful and the cinematography is good and she had like the thematic elements there and the symbolism there, but just that, I don't know, maybe that's something you can't teach, man. It's something you just have to have.
I don't know that you can't teach it. I think you're right though. If you have experience as a director and as a writer, I think you begin to see your way through to how am I going to connect these elements? How am I going to make it interesting for the audience?
Yeah.
And I think some filmmakers, I'm not suggesting that's what happened with her, but I think some filmmakers get stuck in the story, in the visuals, and they lose sight of the big picture. And they're like, okay, the cinematography is going to be great here. And
Yes.
this scene's going to be awesome. But then you're not thinking about, okay, but how does it connect to the rest of the scenes? And how does it, as an entirety, what's the impact on my viewers? How are they seeing this film? Now, again, I'm not saying that that's what's happening with her, but I think sometimes that's what happens with directors that get hung up on CG or cinematography or an element that is working, and they don't fill in the gaps of the elements that aren't working.
Like I almost felt like the characters didn't feel authentic.
Yeah.
Like they just felt not realistic or not
Yeah, they're
real.
pretty
Like,
cardboard.
very cardboard. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was hard to get invested in them. And I think for this film to work, it's kind of predicated on you being invested in the characters.
Like, for example, I think it would have made a super interesting film if the moment, now, of course, it's Dakota Fanning's character, but when Daniel locks them out,
Yes. Right.
if they had played that through and those two ended up
Sure.
dying, that would have been an interesting film. Like, what's gonna happen now?
Yeah.
Right. But of course, there's all those, I don't know, tropes in Hollywood, about, well, I mean, this was the beauty of Longlegs is, arguably Nick Cage is one of the focal characters, but they kill him off early.
Yeah.
Right. We're in spoiler section, and we've talked about this movie already, so I'm not going back on that.
And did the like the flashback and her guilt around her mother, and did that work for you? That sequence was done well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's reasonable. Yeah.
But then her character in the present seems so flat and cardboard. I don't know. Yeah, I just didn't feel that like sympathy for her, and I don't think it's due to Dakota Fanning because she's really good.
Yeah, I mean, you can only do what you can do with the material that you're given, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, for whatever reason, it's also possible that she didn't connect with the character and the writing. And I mean, she seems a bit young to phone in a performance, but maybe that's what it was for her. I don't know.
I wonder how predictable that is for most people. Like the idea that Madeline was actually one of the changelings. Did you think that was pretty obvious?
As the film progresses, maybe, you definitely, they set her apart right from the get-go.
Mhm.
So I can't imagine that you would not pick up on that. It's like, well, how can you not pick up on the fact that she's the outsider here?
Yeah.
And the fact that she has something invested in controlling the others. I don't know. I mean, it was obvious to me, but like I said, I'd read the book, so I knew the story, and I knew that one of those characters was one of those things.
Yeah.
So, it was obvious who it was, but yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know. I mean, I think I think you're right again that it's so close. It's nearly there.
Yeah. As you said, like the parts are all there, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to gel
Yeah.
as a film. So I think that's all we can say about this one. I don't know if there's much more that I have.
No, I think that's pretty much what I had, but I do think this is only her directorial debut, and
I
so
think so.
I think she is talented, and I think with a bit more experience, hopefully, that she'll have a promising future.
I can imagine too that, her father being who he is, if he has availability, he'll still be working on her films.
Yeah, and I think we are both Shyamalan fans, mostly.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it is a shame. And I don't think there's nothing here. I do think the more willing you are to just turn off your brain and go along for a ride, like we're probably overthinking it a little bit. Like maybe it's a better film than we're saying it is.
Maybe. But we've seen a lot of films, so I think we have.
Well, that's almost my point. So I think for someone, if you're a very casual moviegoer,
okay, fair,
and you just went into this and watched it, I think there's enough good elements.
Yeah, okay, fair.
Where you might enjoy it. But yeah, as soon as you start putting it under the magnifying glass, I feel like it kind of falls apart.
Yeah, and I think
With a
again,
microscope.
you've hit it on the head. If you're only a casual film goer,
Yeah.
and you don't think at all about the films that you're watching, yeah, you might come away with an okay,
because this had a higher audience score, is that right, than the
Yes.
critic score?
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense to me.
It does.
Because I think as soon as you start to dissect it as a film, it
Yeah.
has a lot of issues. But if you were just going to watch this for entertainment and you weren't overthinking it and you weren't nitpicking it and you were just along for the ride, then maybe it would actually be
Yeah, fair.
okay.
Yeah, it's quite possible.
So, well, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to ask some casuals who watched this movie to see what they thought.
I mean, the 5.7 is not really overwhelming, and neither is 52%. So there's definitely a lot of I think, the audience saw where this could be a better film, I think.
Yeah. And I actually don't envy her position, because
No.
that must be so difficult. Because any other film director can kind of just start making films. But when you're coming in and it's hyping it up, like the marketing was, oh, it's a Shyamalan, like M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, and it's her directorial debut. Like there was a lot of hype.
I mean, it's like Sofia Coppola, right? Those
Yeah.
are big shoes to fill if
For
you're
sure.
trying to, and all of many of those people in Hollywood. I mean, Kirk Douglas, his father was a famous, the Barrymores were Hollywood royalty. Like, I think there's a lot of not just directors, but there's a lot of positions, whether you're a singer or, John Bonham's son coming to play drums for Led
Mhm.
Zeppelin. I mean, there seems to be a little pressure there as far as I'm concerned,
Does
right?
Tommy Wiseau have a son?
He probably does.
It's
Yeah.
a big shoes to
Mark,
fill, too.
I think is the name.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, hi, Mark.
The room too. So yeah, it's there's lots of good things going on, but it didn't work, unfortunately, and I don't recommend it. But hopefully, a second kick of the can will be better.
Yeah, I would look forward to her sophomore film.
Yes, me too.
So it's not a recommend.
Not a recommend
from either one of us. However, she may do better on her second outing.
Yep, and we may
Discover-
try and review Trap by M. Night Shyamalan, which comes out next month. So
That's right. Yeah, I
kind of
think
cool.
it's early.
Father
Father-daughter.
daughter, two films within a month of each other. So
Yeah, because that one looks actually really interesting. Unfortunately, they've given away
yeah, except the trailer spoils it all. But
unless there's a twist and maybe
there's a good chance it's a
yeah,
twist.
there's a good chance
That's what I'm hoping.
being a Shyamalan film. We'll see you
In the aisles.